So good afternoon. We have a few questions about the correction process. The first one was just in regards to a student was tested on the initial ELPAC, and the scores were entered into the local scoring tool, and the student was identified as an English learner. The parent has come in saying that she made a mistake on the HLS and that she should be in English only. The HLS specifically says a parent may make a correction to their HLS prior to the assessment being administered. This does not mean that she cannot enter in a request a classification change, but the LEA would need to collect evidence to support that change. And that may take a little bit of time, and it is at the LEA's discretion to collect that information and support that parent's request. And it asks which correction process. That would be correction process C. Another one was in regards to our, a little bit about reclassification, but it's really about using the correction process to reclassify students who were previously identified as an EL with the SELT, and the correction process is only available for those students who are administered the initial ELPAC this year or were previously identified as an English only. So it does not apply to students who were previously administered the SELT and identified as an English learner. Okay. So another question, under process C, can I use this to change an EL to an IFEP? And what if the EL is from another school? There is no rule. It's up to the LEAs to determine if that student is an EL. They have the ability to change a student to an IFEP as long as it is before the summative ELPAC is administered, and vice versa. If a student is IFEP, you can still collect information along the way to support a change to EL. So I think those were all the correction. Is there a way to correct mistakes when inputting ELPAC scores into the local scoring tool in TOMS? And the answer is yes. There is an ELPAC score request form under the test administration /forms tab. This allows an LEA that has data entry errors to be fixed, along with if a student was used like an incorrect SSID and you need to make those changes. If a student was tested in error, that would be correction process B, which is for an ineligible student, because then those scores have to be removed from the system. One of the things that we've been working on diligently is in regards to our summative scores from last year being available to the newly enrolled LEA this year. And so we are in the process of testing a new score data extract file, which will allow the LEAs to get all of their currently enrolled students' results. We're testing that this week, and we hope to have that available next week for our districts. And another question about Moodle training. Moodle is required for all test examiners who are administering the speaking domain for the summative assessment. And they must go in and be certified, and your site coordinator and LEA ELPAC coordinators need to be monitoring that this is occurring. And finally, the new ELPAC coordinator training, they asked if it was going to be archived. So yesterday, the training was videotaped, and it should be out in a couple weeks, Nikki? 2 to 3 weeks. So probably look around the middle of October, and we will send out a communication to all of our LEA ELPAC coordinators.
Okay. I have a question here regarding ELPAC scores, and they're seeing overall scores and then domain scores, and they are thinking the combinations don't make sense, right? So one thing to remember is that it's not a one-to-one. So what you're seeing in the written composite, that's not the same number of levels that you have in the overall. So you need to keep that in mind. The other thing to keep in mind is that what I mentioned before, which is the fact that we did conduct a threshold validation study. We are analyzing those results right now. We will be putting forward an October information memorandum that describes the different studies that we did on the ELPAC results. Then we will be going before our state board in November. With any recommended changes to the ELPAC threshold scores for the summative. One thing to keep in mind, though, is that your composite scores have fewer items in them. They're less precise than that overall, which has much more information. So keep that in mind. The other question I have here, we should have known this is coming. We got this in North. The other question I have is, if a student takes the California Spanish assessment, can they be exempt from taking the Smarter Balanced English Language Arts assessment? So for one, those two tests do assess different content. The Spanish assessment assesses the Common Core in Espanol, and that is different. We actually take the content of the language into consideration when developing that test. So the answer is no, it is not in lieu of. The Spanish assessment is an optional assessment. We hope you see value to your students in the form of increasing biliteracy in our student population. So we hope you see value in that, but that does not exempt you from taking the Smarter Balanced assessment.
And I have one more question here. Have all the ELPAC test scores been scored and the results been sent? Oh, more bonus. As I said yesterday in the training, but just to reiterate to our folks here and out in the field, all of the answer books that were received by our testing contractor were scored, and the electronic student score reports were sent to districts on September 14th, so you should have had that last set of downloadable data files. And the student score reports should be arriving this week, today, or tomorrow. If you have not received them, please contact the call center. And just a reminder, there were a large number of ineligible or unknown answer books turned in where we didn't know what the English language acquisition status was. And we contacted those districts and we sent the information on to them to have them correct. So they may have missed that because it was during the summer and they were not in session. So please contact the call center. They will track down and let you know if you were part of that group, or bonus, your student score report should be showing up any day. For the RSVP schools, what is the date we need to return the ELPAC initial tests? Deadline fixed or rolling? It's a rolling deadline, so those tested in July would return them September 15th. In August, it will be October 15th, and so forth, September for November and October for December. There's a question about the digital library. Please review slowly the exemption rules for students with IEPs in Section 5Rs. So a student, when the IEP team or Section 504 team meets, they take a look at what the accommodations are needed for their students, and then they will look at to see what is available on the ELPAC using their Matrix 4. If it is determined that there are no accommodations for a specific domain, they may make a decision to exempt that student from the domain. The domain that is exempted is not given a loss score, but actually will be estimated as part of the 3 remaining scores that will be calculated, and it will then produce an overall score. So there is no actual score or performance level for the domain that is exempt, but it still is part of either the oral or the written score that will be produced.
The question that we have is about whether or not a teacher who has a digital library account can view the interim assessment results. And the answer is not necessarily. You have to have certain provisions attached to your account. So if the individual who wrote this still has questions and needs to understand provisioning a little better, then Michael McDaniel is going to raise his hand right now, right there, and he is the man that can help you.